I'm Natalie. I have been practicing and teaching Tantra meditations and healing for the past 7 or 8 years, and I opened this channel, Tantra for the Soul, where I'm going to talk about all the topics that no one talks about with context to Tantra and sexuality and all the emotional healing that so many of us need to go through around this topic. And today I wanted to talk about the guilt that a lot of men feel around their sexuality. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is that I had a session today with a guy, and it was all about his guilt that he felt about being too sexual, and he had this very sexual past, and now he's married with kids and he feels trapped, and he does sometimes do sexual things with other women when he's overseas. And he felt very guilty about the whole situation that he was in. So I know this isn't a topic that is usually spoken of, but it is the kind of thing that I work with men. And I grew up with a father who cheated on my mom and was very sexual and basically ruined our family. Kind of, I guess that was the story, because of his sexuality or hypersexuality. And my mom taught me when I was a very young kid that men are horny and they're bad and they do bad things because of their sexuality. And I was angry at men my whole life for being too sexual and too horny. And I did a lot of work around anger and my anger towards men. And part of the work was actually doing sessions with men and being very compassionate and doing it from the heart. And instead of judging them and getting angry at them, I tried to see the inner child and the emotional reasons that they did the things that they did. So as a woman, I have done a lot of work with male sexuality, all the issues I had and all the things that had to do with my father. And I do healing sessions at the moment with men mainly. And so I have a few insights that I wanted to share with you about this male guilt that a lot of men have around their sexuality. And I want to talk about where that guilt comes from and what men can do with that guilt and how they can try to heal it. And I can tell you that in the session that I had today, the biggest thing or the most important thing that I can do for a man like that who comes to me is reassure him that everything's okay. It's okay that you're horny. It's okay that you have all the sexual energy. It's okay that if your wife, doesn't give you that place, you look for it somewhere else. And I'm not encouraging anyone to cheat because, again, in my childhood, our family was ruined because of cheating. So it's not like I'm justifying cheating on your wife, but some men have these needs and they want to experience these things, and they get married and they think they're going to have all these experiences with their wife, and then she gets pregnant and the whole thing kind of goes downhill, and at the end of the day they find themselves without any sexual life. So I can understand why a man would look for sexual experiences outside of the marriage if he's not finding it there. Obviously, the better solution would be to talk to your wife about it and to do the work with her, because women are also sexual beings. It's not just a man thing. But the guilt that men carry, even if they haven't cheated, just for being horny, for watching too much porno, for masturbating too much, all that guilt, it has a cost on these men. So first of all, let's talk about the guilt in general that men have around their sexuality. Where does it come from? It comes from childhood, like everything else. When men were boys and they first found out that their penis is actually something that can give them pleasure, and if they rub the penis, then this liquid comes out and this whole fun experience happens, that's a big discovery for a young boy. And usually he'll quickly learn from his surroundings that this masturbation that he discovered is not good. Don't do it around people. Sometimes when young boys are caught in their bedroom, they get yelled at. And in general, they are taught by their environment, where they grew up, their family, their home. They are taught that masturbation is a bad thing. You've got to do it in secret. Don't talk about it. Don't tell anyone. Don't show anyone. And that's where the guilt actually begins to be connected with it. So it starts off with young boys being embarrassed about masturbating, usually because of the way that family addresses the issue. And the second place that a lot of men get their guilt from is society, because, you know, when you're a kid and you kind of want to masturbate and just be okay with it, and then you go to school, and in school you have to be like proper, you have to act in a certain way, you have to behave in a certain way, and being sexual in a school environment is frowned upon. So young boys are taught to hide their sexuality, not to talk about it, and not to show it in public to other people. And that's where they become or begin to be very ashamed, and they hide their sexuality, and maybe some of them even think that something's wrong with them because they have no one to talk about it. And then all these weird ideas come into their head that their sexuality is a bad thing. And then you have TV and the media and porn and, you know, all these messages that young boys get from the media and from society, that being too horny is a bad thing, especially with all the Me Too movement and everything that's happened in the world in the last few years. So as a boy, if you grow up in that kind of society, you'll maybe feel very guilty about being horny and about wanting to have sex and about masturbating, and that guilt is suppressed, and it's suppressed into our subconscious, and it later affects, you know, sexual experiences as men, because I'm coming to the sexual experiences with all this guilt. And guilt, the vibration of that emotion of guilt, is second chakra. So it's going to affect the way that men perform during sex, and it's going to affect what they're attracted to in sex. Another way that the guilt shows up in adulthood in men is that because they feel so guilty about being horny and too sexual, sometimes they disconnect from their emotions while having sexual intercourses with people, with women, with whoever. And they only have sex on a very like physical level, but no emotions come to play in the situation because of the guilt that has, you know, been building up since childhood, basically. And they don't feel like it's okay what they're doing. Maybe they're doing a bad thing. And, you know, the guilt comes up, and then sometimes they disconnect from their emotions during sexual encounters. In other times, it can actually affect their performance during sexual encounters. So because of the guilt, maybe I can't hold on that long, or maybe, you know, the penis falls and goes to sleep in the middle of a sexual interaction, and it's all because of the guilt. And then, of course, you have like premature ejaculation that happens to normal, healthy men. It shouldn't technically happen to them because there's nothing actually wrong physically with their body, but they have so much guilt around their sexuality. And I think another thing that contributes to the guilt is not talking to anyone about it, not even your friends. So these men are walking around feeling like they're terrible monsters, they're so horny, something's wrong with them, and then they feel just this endless stream of guilt towards and around their sexuality. And it does affect the way that they perform, it affects the way that they experience sexual encounters, it affects the quality of the experience, because I'm not fully present, because I have all this guilt coming up. And even if it doesn't actually come up during sex, it was there before, it's going to be there after, and subconsciously it's always there. The guilt is always there. I'm not saying all men feel guilty about their sexuality, but I'm talking about those who do. How do we break the cycle, and how can men address this guilt and maybe do some emotional work around it so it doesn't affect their actual, you know, their sexuality and their sexual lives as adults? I think the first stage is the awareness, is recognizing where this began. Why do I feel guilty? Did someone catch me maybe when I was a kid masturbating and yelled at me? Who made me feel guilty about being horny, about being sexual? There was one or more people when I was young who taught me as a young boy that this thing is not okay. Don't talk about it with anyone. Don't do it around other people. So who is the first person in my life who made me feel guilty about masturbating, about being horny, about wanting to have sex with women? Because the voice in my head that's, you know, my guilt today as an adult is actually based on the voice of someone else that I heard when I was a child. And after we bring awareness to the issue, we can also bring in some self-compassion, which is what I try to teach them in the sessions. It's okay that you're horny. It's okay that you're sexual. You're just a human being. You have a penis. It's nice to touch. You want to have sexual interactions with women because you want a woman to touch you and to love you and to be intimate with you. And you're just human. We're all human beings. It's normal to be sexual. It's normal to be horny. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your body. There's nothing wrong with your desires or your fantasies or the things that you want or nothing's wrong with you. Everything's okay. You were maybe taught some weird things when you were a kid, like it's not okay, but actually it's okay. And I think a lot of the times talking to a woman like me who tells you as a man that it's okay is very helpful with the guilt. I can tell you personally that my dad walked around with all this guilt in his life because all these women were telling him like how bad he is and what a monster he is just because he wanted to have some intimacy. And towards the end of his life, I was the one he would talk to about all these things that he was doing, and I would just be like, it's okay. If you want to feel loved, then do this thing. If you don't feel loved in the relationship, then leave the relationship. It's okay that you're a sex... I know it's weird that I talk to my dad about it, but that's like one of my trauma stuff that I worked with. But it was basically like I just accepted him for who he was, and I did that because I accepted all these other men that I did sessions with and healing sessions with, and I really don't think it's a bad thing. Like, we are all horny, we're all sexual beings, we all have sexual genitals. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. If you do crimes and you're violent with it, then yes, but just general sexuality, nothing's wrong with it. Another thing that men can do is healthy intimacy practices, which basically means while you're masturbating, doing breath work, telling yourself like a mantra in your head, like, it's okay, I'm allowed to be horny, it's okay to masturbate, I'm just a healthy man who has sexual urges, and be honest with yourself and tell yourself that what you're doing is fine and you're allowed to be a sexual being. There's nothing wrong with that. You haven't done anything wrong to anyone. You're just a normal person who has sexual urges. There's nothing wrong with it. And we kind of have to like delete and reprogram ourselves, like delete the old programming and then reprogram ourselves to these new beliefs that are completely true. It's okay to be sexual. It's okay to have sexual energy. You want to find the right place to use it in, but it's totally okay and fine. And I do feel like society is in a place where we're redefining masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? What do I like in men? What attracts me in men? Sometimes it's very strong men, strong physically, strong emotionally. And I can tell you personally as a woman, I love male sexuality. I'm straight. If I'm with a man that I'm attracted to and he starts feeling all the sexual energy, then I start feeling the sexual energy, and it's fun. I like having sex. I want to have it with emotion, and I want to have it maybe in some kind of relationship, whether it's monogamous or polyamorous or whatever. I don't know how you say that, but like, poly, and sex is fine. And I want my man to be horny and to want to devour me sexually. I think that's what ignites my sexual energy. So we want to redefine masculinity in a healthier way. And my message to men who are watching this video is that your sexuality is not something that you need to be ashamed of. It's natural and it's beautiful, and it can be a source of a very deep connection that you can experience with women and with yourself if you start paying attention to the guilt and doing the work. And then it will help you. If you have less guilt, you can be more present. And if you're more present, you can be more in your body and you can feel the energy. And then you can feel the other person who's with you. And sexuality can be a very deep and spiritual experience. But we need to kind of remind ourselves that we're not doing anything wrong and that it's perfectly fine. And I think when you heal the guilt, you don't just transform your sexual life. You transform your relationship with yourself. And then it will also transform your relationship that you have with women in general, women in sexuality. And, women have so much guilt around sexuality. We're not different there. So if we talk about the subject, maybe we can open it up a bit more. So that's my brief take on male sexuality and the guilt that a lot of them have around this subject. I don't know if you've ever felt guilt around your sexuality, but I would love to hear about it in the comments and just to hear your experience and what you thought on the subject. And if it does resonate with you, you're more than welcome to keep on watching my videos and subscribe and like, because I'm going to talk about this subject a lot. It's the subject that I feel is the easiest to talk about because there's no politics around it. I mean, there kind of is in the, Western world today, but I'm a woman and I can say whatever I want, and that's my feeling. And I have so much compassion for men because I love men. They're a big, important part of my life, and I think it's true for a lot of other straight women. And I think that us as women, we can also help men heal their guilt and their sexuality by being a little bit more compassionate there. And I think that's what will help heal the world.